If last week's episode was an homage to 1978 John Carpenter's Halloween, one could say that this episode was a nod to 1999's mini horror series written by Stephen King called The Storm of the Century. Now, for those who aren't familiar, listen to this tagline. The narrative is set on the fictional Little Tall Island in Maine during a blizzard that cuts off the ferry-based island community off to the mainland. The residents are terrorized by an arrival of a menacing stranger who knows their deepest secrets and demands a particular sacrifice with the ultimatum, give him what he wants and he'll just simply go away. Secret is the key word I want to focus on. As the secrets of Widow's Bay start to come to light, I can't shake the feeling that a mother's secret is the best of them all. Welcome back to my channel, everybody. Today we are taking a deep dive into the deadly waters of this penultimate episode, episode 9 of Widow's Bay. We're talking about secrets, we got a storm coming, and a revelation so huge it might just be a mother of all secrets. With that said, grab your starters and take shelter as we are here to break it all down, full spoilers ahead. We open this episode with a trip back to a very familiar setting in 1702. We're back with Sarah and the kids, right where we last saw them, desperately trying to escape the island. The fog that has plagued the island surrounds them, making it impossible for Sarah to navigate and to find the boat that they were after. But then the real horrors begin. As they approach the dead zone, the children start feeling the effects of the curse of leaving the island as they start to cough and dark blood starts oozing out of their noses. And to make matters even worse, the boat shakes and little Frances falls into the water. As the boat drifts further and further away and the coughs grow louder, Sarah throws an object to Frances to help her stay afloat. But the fog swallows them whole, deepening the separation. The screams grow louder and louder as little Frances is left alone in the water. Man, again, this show just knows how to create such a great sense of tension and suspense. To me, this opening perfectly set the tone for the rest of this episode, setting it where no one is safe and the hope of surviving is becoming an illusion. Also, I couldn't help but to make the connection between seeing Frances as a sole survivor and how that ties directly into the major character reveal that happens later in this episode. We cut back to present day where we see the storm is looming over the island as Tom looks outside his office window thinking about what to do now that he knows that the curse isn't over. Patricia advises he sounds the sirens, as does this random town person who randomly pops up. He goes on to share the horrors of the last devastating storm of 1783 on the island, which included men being ripped into the sky and babies torn from their mother's arms, as Patricia slowly closes the door in his face. Now, we'll end up seeing one of these examples later in the episode, but the part about the babies being torn from their mother's arms, did anyone else instantly think about Bashir's wife and their newborn child and how we might see her baby and their baby being taken away from her arms in next week's finale? Now, despite everything that he's witnessed, we can see that Tom is still on the fence about accepting what's coming their way, as he's internally struggling and wrestling with the economic implications. If he sounds the sirens and sends everyone to the shelters, he believes that all the recent visitors would end up trashing the island's reputation, forcing the newly visitor popular tourist attraction to have to start from scratch. Now, we can see that Tom's anger gets the best of him as he tries to rip his calendar but is unsuccessful in doing so. But then he beelines straight to the very important painting, but in his frustration, he underestimates his weight as it tumbles upon him, landing on his chest, adding more insult to injury. But call it the perfect storm, pun intended, because this unfortunate event leads to one of the major revelations of this episode. Patricia notices that the woman in the painting is missing a finger and she runs to grab Sarah's journal. Meanwhile, we see Rosemary, who's going to be very important later, makes things worse by pushing the painting further into Tom's chest.
2, 3, ow! Oh, my sciatica.
Oh, poor Rosemary.
But thankfully, Kenny quickly steps in to help Tom as Patricia returns and confirms my theory from last week. The mystery woman in the painting that is missing her finger and wearing the brooch Sarah's mother passed down to her is no other than Frances Warren, meaning that she survived the boat tragedy, which explains why the curse continues. After taking in this new information, Tom realizes the challenges that this brings. If Frances survived, that means that there is over 400 years of ancestry to untangle, and besides that, what are they to do with the descendants? Round them all up, and what next? Are they supposed to kill them? That right there is the moral dilemma and the central conflict that will be very important later as Tom ultimately decides to sound the sirens. Meanwhile, after learning of the island's curse regarding not being able to leave it once you're born there, we find Bashir with his wife hoping to find a ferry for her to board before her baby arrives. Clearly, the ferry isn't on its way because of the storm that's coming, but Bashir refuses to accept that as he frantically gathers supplies to take a small boat out into the deadly waters to get to the mainland for him and his wife. Now, Wick sees him and tries to explain to Bashir that taking a small boat into the water during the storm is a triple suicide mission. He manages to talk Bashir off the ledge as Bashir tells him that he still hasn't told his wife why he's so panicked as they head towards the shelter. Now, this is where we can feel the sense of urgency going on in the town as the islanders are battening down the hatches, moving everyone into the town hall's basement. Now, we see Tom instructing everyone down to the shelter, and he pulls Evan aside, and Evan promises that he won't sneak out, and he's even willing to wait for the storm to pass for them to take their trip to the mainland to see the Red Sox. Now, outside, Tom and Patricia learn that the generator isn't working, and Garrett at the lighthouse might be able to help them. But unfortunately, the comms aren't working as Tom decides to go to Garrett to get what they need. Now, Bashir and his wife arrive, and she starts to feel the movement of the baby, and this could be possibly her feeling contractions that are coming. Now, before we get deeper into the storm, I have to address something from last week. Now, my breakdown of episode 8 included what became a pretty hot take, as I said that I believe that Tom wasn't Evan's biological father, and man, did you all let me know in the comments how wrong I was. Now, my reasoning stems from episode 1 with Tom's wording and him mentioning that it was no secret that Lauren was pregnant before they got married. Now, to me, the way that was said, it made me believe that she was pregnant by another man. Now, secondly, the way Evan treated Tom and has been treating him this whole season besides last week's episode, it was no respect at all. Like, he was sneaking out, he was smoking, and yes, this is typical rebellious teenager behavior, but at the same time, to me, I read it like, you're not my real dad, you're my stepdad type of behavior.
What?
You're not my dad! You also want to hear something! Ugly ass fucking...
Well, I'm big enough to admit when I'm wrong, and I will admit that I probably overthought it, but I wasn't alone. Matter of fact, there is a whole subreddit about this very topic that I end up finding after Googling this very question, is Tom Evan's dad? I even came across a video from the Ringer podcast, which they actually had the same question, but they gave a definitive answer.
I get an answer from production on this show about the parentage between Tom and Evan.
Did we?
Your eyes for a second and I'll just tell the camera.
Let's do it.
Okay.
Why not? We'll just zone out for a little bit. Do your thing.
So the no secret line was just about the timing of the wedding and the birth, and Evan is just a teenager. So with the air now clear, Tom is his dad. Now let's get back to him being the hero, or in some eyes, he might be the villain. While Tom is playing MacGyver, we see Wick is playing a detective. He finds Sarah's journal and the painting and quickly puts 2 and 2 together. He realizes the identity of the person in the painting and knows they need to find the living descendant of the Warrens to break whatever cycle that they're in. As he heads straight to Rosemary's office, the keeper of the island's secrets, to dig into the ancestry. Now back with Tom, he makes it to the lighthouse, but Garrett has already left for the shelter, but luckily he brought the starter that they needed for the generator with him. But as Tom steps outside, we see the show's budget really shows as we get to see this massive tornado forming in the sky, exactly like the old timer warned him earlier in the episode. Now, as Tom rushes back to the town hall, we see Todd arrives. We all remember him as the shaman. We see him dropping his gear. He starts to grab at it, and out of nowhere, he gets sucked up into the sky, just like the townsperson also said happened in the past, as Tom realizes how dangerous the storm really is. Tom makes it inside and immediately tells Patricia that no one is to leave this basement for their own safety. But there is a problem. Ruth is still at home and she's alone. Now, Tom says he's going to figure out a way to get her, which to me is a subtle hint at what's to come later as Wick arrives and tells Tom and Patricia that there's something that they need to see. Now, Rick had Rosemary run a genealogy test and she discovered that the Warrens have one last living descendant. Now, this was the funniest scene to me because Rosemary was all about the theatrics during this moment as she carefully breaks down the entire family tree, starting when Richard lost his two sons back when they first arrived on the island. After surviving the boat tragedy, we find out that Frances was found by a wealthy man named Barnabas Fisher, who raised her and eventually married her at the age of 14, taking his last name, which actually explains why no one knew that she was actually a Warren. He would later die and give Francis his whaling business and a son by the name of Jonathan. From here, the family tree is just filled with crazy nonsense and drama. Rosemary goes over the entire saga, which feels like a mix of Star Wars meets Game of Thrones, as there are children, there are deaths, and a dash of incest. The family tree is less of a tree and more of a tangled bush of scandalous insanity. Again, we're talking dead babies, lesbians, and a murder mystery as well. Look, man, we know Rosemary loves her gossip, and right now she is living her best life as she is basically hosting a true crime podcast from beyond the grave, going on and sharing every little detail and every twist and turn. But then, after all the centuries of chaos, we finally fast forward to the 1900s and ultimately landing in 1959. Now, this person had no clue about their family history. Now, this person never married, nor did they ever have children, which is surprising because she was described as beautiful and even crowned Miss Widow Bay of 1959. Now, this beautiful woman would go on to grow old, and that person is no other than Tom's assistant, the sweet, unassuming woman who sometimes can't even read her own handwriting, that being Ruth Levinson, who I predicted it would be in my previous breakdown, but I'm starting to now have a feeling that there is definitely more to her story. Now, as we come to the close of this episode, we see Tom, Patricia, and Rick discussing what they should do next as Tom asks about Ruth's health. He's clearly already weighing the possibility of her nearing death, but Rick, he goes full-blown Carroll from The Walking Dead. He suggests they speed up the process by killing her peacefully, of course, and that being a shot to the back of her head to end this curse once and for all before the storm swallows them all. Patricia is horrified about their lack of humanity, which brings us to what they call the trolley problem. Is it morally right to sacrifice one innocent life to save many? I need to know in the comments, y'all, what would you do in this situation? I can see both sides of the argument. Some of the situation would say yes, obviously focusing on the outcome, that being if one death saves a town, it's better overall. Now others would say no, an innocent life is always wrong to take no matter the benefit. It really kind of boils down to whether you prioritize results or moral principles. Now, Patricia reminds them of who Ruth is to them. She's baked birthday cakes for them. She's kind. She's a gentle soul. And remember this important part from my theory I'm going to be sharing with you all here in a bit, as Patricia points out that Ruth has looked after Evan from time to time. Again, keep that little detail in the back of your mind for a little bit later. Now, none of that makes a difference to Wick, who doubles down on the fact that Ruth never married, nor has she had children. Now, notice that this detail of her not having any children or never being married is mentioned within the last few minutes of this episode. Whenever a show repeats a detail like that, you know that it is very important. Now, we end this penultimate episode with the phone ringing and Tom hearing Mitch screaming that it's all going, and he hangs up. Now, Wick is ready to act, prepared to go to Rufus and put an end to this, but Tom tells him no, he's not going to end anything as Tom walks towards the door and presumably headed to Rufus to do the one thing that he hasn't been able to do all season long, and that being to make a tough decision. I really love that last detail of Tom being the one to presumably go to Rufus' house to end things, because it goes back to the conversation all the way back in episode 1 when Wick told Tom that he never respected him because he's never been that person to ring the doorbell, to make the tough decisions. So I love that little detail at the end. So with all that being said, let's talk about Rufus and what Tom plans to do next, because while I did nail the theory about Francis and Rufus and that whole connection, in my mind, it just can't be that easy. There were so many hints and clues and so many nods and references in this very episode, especially when it came to the Warren family history. And the fact that Wick brought up that Rufus never married nor had kids twice in the final minutes, that to me is just not a throwaway detail. This brings me back to episode 8. Remember Tom and Evan's conversation about Lauren's letters? Remember one of them talked about 2 moms and one being a secret mom? Stick with me for a second. Now, Rosemary just gave us the entire messy, secret-filled rundown of the Warrens' family history, which supposedly led to Ruth being the last of her bloodline, or is she? Now, a lot of you all have been talking about Evan being the last of the bloodline, so let's take Evan, let's take Ruth, and let's have some fun. I absolutely 100% believe that Lauren's story about the secret mom wasn't necessarily about her being 2 moms to Evan, but rather the show setting up Ruth being a secret mom instead. I believe that in next week's finale, we're going to learn that Ruth did have a secret child. But who could it be? Could it be Wick? Could it be Tom himself? Or maybe Patricia? Or, now this is where things get really interesting, what if that child was Tom's wife, Evan's mom, Lauren herself? Now, to add even more fuel to this theory fire, what if Lauren knew about this situation with potentially Ruth being her mom, and that is where she got the whole idea and the whole story of 2 moms and a secret mom, and that came from her own experience? Now, this is the only missing part of my theory, and that being, like, I don't know what happened for Lauren not to be raised by Ruth, or why Ruth kept this a secret. But I go back to the fact that Patricia brought up how Ruth has watched over Evan over the years. That line right there cemented my theory. Think about it. If Ruth wasn't in Lauren's life for whatever reason, we'll probably find out in the finale if my theory is to be true, but if Lauren is led to be believed to be dead and she's not in the basement, which I know some of you all think she might be, but what better way to make up for lost time than to secretly, and obviously Tom and Evan don't know this, but Ruth wants to spend time with her grandson when she would watch over him. And finally, narratively speaking, that entire ending sequence gave me even more confidence. Patricia questioning Tom about sacrificing one person for the whole town, and he seems to have come to the conclusion that possibly killing Ruth is the answer and it's worth it. But then Patricia said to him and Wick that what if it was you, or basically someone that was important to you? Would you still make that decision? So now adding the pieces to the puzzle, put Evan to the equation, his son. Would Tom be willing to still make the sacrifice? And that right there is the important question and the important choice, because this whole season, the one thing that Tom has wanted, he even prayed for it, and that is the protection of his son, Evan. So again, thematically and just narratively speaking, if Ruth is Evan's grandmother, then Tom's impossible decision just became even more devastatingly more personal. So what do you all think of my theory? That being that Ruth is the mother of Lauren and no one knows about it because it was a secret, and that would make her the grandmother of Evan. And also, now while I say this out loud, it makes sense why she's so nice to Tom and does all these things for Tom. And she's the assistant of Tom because secretly that is her son-in-law. What do you all think in the comments below? Now, before we head out, there are still some unanswered questions that remain. One that come to mind is there something or someone in Tom's basement? Another one that comes to mind is, what's the deal with the room with the chair and what's behind the doors? What exactly did Reverend Bryce find, and what led him to taking his own life, or was it the island that killed him? What about Wick and Jerry? What's going to happen between them, and what happened to Jerry's brother? And more importantly, will Apple TV announce a season 2? They're always quick at giving shows 5, 6 seasons, even if no one's watching it. But we know how popular this show has become. So I hope that by next week, they're going to announce that there will be a season 2 because we need a season 2 of this incredible show. With all that being said, ladies and gentlemen, that will conclude my breakdown of this penultimate episode, episode 9 of Widow's Bay. I want to take this time to thank you all for watching or listening to this week's breakdown. Now, before we wrap it all up, I would love to do like a mailbag type of video before the finale, because I've done that for other shows, like one final video with theories, predictions, so on and so forth. So if you all want to participate in that video by sending me your final predictions and or your theories, and you want to be included in that video, please email me at moviefilesreview@gmail.com, which can be found in the pinned comments below. Now, please submit all your theories, predictions, questions, all that good stuff that can be included in the video. Please have it submitted by Friday if you all are interested. Now, if you all are watching this week's breakdown on YouTube, I appreciate you all. If you all enjoyed this breakdown, hit the like button. When you all hit the like button, there's a hype button, which allows this video to spread across new viewers. Which, speaking of new viewers, consider sharing this video to anyone and everyone you know that loves talking about this show. And look, we are so close to 100,000 subscribers, which is just crazy to think of. So if you all want to help me reach that goal, consider sticking around by subscribing to the channel today. Now, if you all are listening to this via podcast, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever you all get your podcasts from, please leave your thoughts, your theories, your predictions, what you all thought about this episode in the comments below. But also consider following the podcast, and I would love it if you all can leave me a 5-star review. Alrighty, y'all, we got one episode left. Again, if you want to see me do like a final theory video that includes you all's predictions, theories, questions, submit all those things to my email, which again can be found in the pinned comments below. But as we wrap up, again, thank you all for watching or listening. Don't forget, you all are awesome. Stay safe, and I'll see you all on the next breakdown.